It was 31 PPUs and it cost $9,108.11.
So each PPU did, okay. And they want us to buy two, so that's per month, right?
Wait a minute, this does not look right. Hang on.
So that basically goes up a little over 9,300 a month.
Yeah, we will crunch this. Exactly.
So that's about $225,000 extra a year, if that 9,000 number was a monthly number.
I don't know if that's right. I was looking at the numbers up above there. We'll just move on. Are we ready to get started? We'll call the August 21st financial review meeting for East Manchester Township to order. Do we want to go through with the pledge, or we want to dispense with those and go right into the meeting?
It's up to you.
Seeing there's nobody here, let's dispense with the formalities and go right into the meeting. Okay, before we get into the financial workshop part of the meeting, last meeting we had a special request from Susquehanna Lions Club requesting a donation for the Halloween parade on Sunday, October 19th. And we're opening up the floor for discussions on that. Traditionally, they would say the parade costs $6,000 to put on. We would pay $6,000 to finance the parade. I don't mind doing that. I just find that we're in an austerity program in 25 and probably 26. We're looking at every expense that we make. We're trying to save some money. I would not be opposed to paying the same as the two boroughs contribute, or doubling that, or whatever we come up with, because it's not called the Northeastern Area Community Halloween Parade. It's called the Manchester Mount Wolf Parade.
Yeah, a lot of our residents though.
Oh, yes, I'm not disputing that. It's just that,
Yeah, I'm with you. It's,
And the bulk of the parade is in both boroughs. They really start in the township.
yeah,
But
no, I mean, it's one of those things where,
residents go to it.
yeah, and we surround the two boroughs. It's one of those places. I agree with the concept or philosophy of time to tighten up a little bit here or there, a little bit everywhere. What I struggle with is this a place where we want to?
I agree with that statement. We always do, we think highly, I do, I think very highly of the Lions Club, and what they do for our community is provide opportunities for our community that none of the municipalities do.
Right.
So, what's the figure that we would like to?
Well,
What do the boroughs pay?
I half believe rumor has it that it's around $2,000. I am not really sure about that. I don't want to.
yeah. What did we do last year?
We commonly do $5,000.
Why don't we just do what we did last year? It's not an increase. I mean, keeps things status quo. I know that's
Last year we did 6,000.
Oh, did we?
Didn't we?
Well, look at
How
you
much?
go, David.
Looks like, hold on, let me
Huh?
open it up just to make sure. Yeah, 2024 Halloween parade donation. But yeah, you're right, Christy. It looks like, I went back to 22 and it was 5,000
Okay.
each year before that, so yeah.
So we upped it. I say I'm inclined to do what we did last year at this point. Because we based our budget on that figure as well, right, Jen? This
Oh.
year's budget?
That comes out of the one that it's just like it's not a separate line item
Right.
for that. It's that 452,500, I think. It's the,
But I mean, that was part of our basis. We took last year's
Yeah,
number
that
of
was included in
6, so
that, yeah.
it's in there and we budgeted for it.
I think it's 452.
I'd be inclined to replicate what we did in '24, given the fact that we budgeted for it and again, it's that kind of,
Oh, that's right, yeah.
where do you cut? I just don't feel that this is a place I would want to take a step back
I
from.
know.
I just don't want to increase it.
I understand, but I just thought being the chairman, I wanted to bring up every viewpoint so we have a 360 look at it.
And I agree with you. I think it was the appropriate thing to do, Dave.
And some people are finding out what, I tell them what we do, but they question why.
Sure.
So, yeah, Darrell, what's your thought?
Yeah, I'd say we propose the same amount we did last year.
If I may, it appears, $500 came out of that line item already for the quick response team. And we budgeted 6,000 in that line item, so that would leave us with 5,500 in that line item.
And there's our answer.
I'll accept the motion.
I'll make a motion, we donate $5,000 to the Lions Club.
Do we want to expend the whole
No.
$5,000? Is there a second to that?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, further discussion by staff? Call for the vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Would you call Mayor or Mike, let him know that that figure is?
Yep.
And why we did that figure?
Yep.
Thank you.
The reason I go with the whole amount is to go, something else may come up to the end of the year.
Yeah, 5,000 left or 500 left in that line item. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen, for that. It was a touchy subject. Like I said, I want to reinforce how much we do appreciate the Lions Club within our community.
Agreed.
Okay, I'm going to hand this over to staff to start leading us into discussions of our financial review. The reason we have the financial review is all of us, staff included, thought this would be a good, healthy exercise for us to do on a quarterly basis to see exactly where our money is being spent, what our projected totals coming in would be, going out, and that way we're not caught, if you may, flat-footed on anything within the budget. So that's why we're here today, and I'll turn it over to Christie.
Well, my question to you, because we gave a lot of information to you guys this time around, and we gave you a draft budget, which is very raw. We literally just started this yesterday, so we don't usually do it this early, but we were like, you know what, let's show you something at least to get that ball rolling, so that when we come back here in October, you've already had eyes on it and any comments that you might have. So we could actually not start there, but start with our what we have for our income statements for year to date. And as you tick down, have you guys seen anything that you'd like explanation of, or?
Can we just get the high-level overview first, revenue-wise versus expense-wise? So I think that's a good place to start before we, zoom in on a particular area.
Yeah, hold on 1 second here.
I just wanted to say too, I thought that was the quick response thing that we put in, but it was actually the Envirothon
Oh.
is what we paid the 500 for. Once I said that, I was like, wait a minute, I don't think it was. So just to clarify that.
Okay.
So just from a revenue standpoint, if I'm reading this correctly, we
Yep.
had budgeted about 4.15 million in revenues.
Yep.
And as of the end of July, right now, we're sitting at about 2.8 million, or 67%. And 7/12, I think, if I remember correctly, was 58%. So from a percent standpoint, we're ahead in that regard. And from an expense standpoint, right? Expense-wise, we had 4.9 million in expenses, and we're at about 3.2. The biggest piece of that, we did the sweeper early in the year, which is, from memory, about $400,000. this, right? So if you take out the sweeper momentarily, because it's a one-time hit, you know, you'd be at about $2.8 million in expenses. And let's see here once. So, yeah, we'd be, without the sweeper, we'd be about spot on expenses, just from a percentage standpoint, like 58% or 7/12 through the year. And that's an imperfect overview, but it, to me, suggests that, generally speaking, we're probably doing okay. But we, you know, the but part is we don't have a lot of extra cash floating around from revenues generated this year thus far.
Mhm.
That's kind of my takeaway. Does that sound about right?
That sounds correct.
Yes.
Well, with that being said, that, the caveat to that for me is we're in debt.
Yeah, we still have our $1.5 million. Now, we've been paying down.
Yes.
What was it, Jen?
Yes.
Like about 59,000 a month or something's in the budget?
I actually have those, I didn't give you guys copies of these, but I printed them for myself. The actual like balance on the loan right now is $876,402 dollars and 85 cents.
So a little over 800,000.
Yeah.
So we paid down 700,000 of it so far. Did we borrow? What did we borrow? I thought it was 1.5.
I believe it was.
That's what I thought we borrowed. So how did we pay
have-
down 700,000 and only doing like 60K a month?
It
51.
started with 950,001, right? Didn't we
I don't
pay
know what that is.
That's what I have as a starting point.
You're saying the loan balance?
Yeah, but that's just this is including everything now. The interest and everything. I'm talking about just the principal.
Right, I understand, but I thought from a principal standpoint, I thought we had borrowed 1.5 million. And maybe I'm wrong.
Well, we were only paying the interest too for a while. We didn't actually start paying the
Well, can we,
payments either.
sorry, Jen, can just confirm what the principal was? Because I got 1.5 million in my head right now, and maybe I'm wrong.
I thought we went change to like 1.2.
Yeah, I don't think. it was
Okay.
that high.
But it's in my head.
And that's okay, maybe it's 1.5 was like the most we would go, and we backed it down. I just don't remember. And unfortunately, the balance sheet isn't here, so I can't tell.
We had the initial drawdown, which was 50,001. And then we took a 500,000, which was the second drawdown, and then 400,000, which was the third drawdown.
So how many drawdowns? 500,000, 400,000?
And yeah, and we had the initial, which was 50,001, which we had to start
Oh,
with,
so then
right?
Yeah.
we were under $1 million then. 950. Okay, that makes more sense then. For some reason, I guess it was.
Well, we went back and forth, and I think I had given you guys like amortization schedules for different, like three
Okay.
different amounts at one point until you guys decided like what you actually wanted to do.
Okay, then that's the answer. I think it was 1.5 is what we could probably go up to. And
Yes.
we all, okay. And then we finally landed on about 950K then. Okay, that makes sense. So we're sitting north of 800. We only were paying interest for a while and then we kicked in. Okay.
Yep.
Still though, I don't foresee us having an extra $800,000 coming out of this year's unless some bluebird lands in our lap in the remaining
Now,
5
and
months.
not have the amount that we need like as the reserve still.
Yeah, I know we have the cash on hand, but the whole reason for having that cash on hand gets back to the guidance we were given that we should keep, what was it, like 40%?
40%
Yes,
operating
that's on the
reserves.
spreadsheet that I gave you. It's just down underneath the colored budget. I
Gotcha.
have the 40%. I think it was 30 and then 20%.
Okay,
I think those numbers are underneath there. I just didn't have it printed for you, but it's under there on the spreadsheet.
no problem. Yeah, so I mean, just from the high level standpoint, I don't feel there's extra bandwidth in our budget currently to say, let's make some extra principal payment right now. That's kind of my big takeaway.
Agreed.
I don't know how, Daryl, Dave, you
Yeah, I
guys-
agree. You know, we can't, we gotta,
you know, now maybe when we get to the end of the year and we're all said and done and we reevaluate, we get through our budget for
Yes.
26, then maybe we can be like, well, okay, based on that. Guess,
Pay down.
well, yeah, what I'm thinking of is it's probably more a function of we keep making our required minimum payments as
Right.
we are.
Mhm.
We get through the budget process, see what 26 looks like, and, you know, kind of kick the payoff down the road a bit, unless, you know, there's some things that, maybe some escrow monies or things of that nature that may make themselves available.
Well, and also I figured, what we've had so far, like, because we actually have that money market account too, and I figured the interest on that, and this is just up to this point. I don't actually have August interest yet, but I have the loan interest and everything in there. So it's actually a little bit, the loan interest isn't, or the money market interest I don't have in for August yet. I don't have that statement yet. 'Cause
That's
it's not
fine.
the end of the month. But our the actual loan interest that we paid so far is $37,499.93. And the money market interest that we've got into that account that we have is $24,331.62. And like I said, that's without, and it looks like the average is about 33 to 3,500, depending on, you know, what the balance is. So actually, it's pretty close. So we're actually getting back close to what we're paying in the interest,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Yep, yeah. No, you got the
So,
extra
just
cash.
to put that out there, so
You've
that
got
kind
the
of
extra
offsets a lot
cash
of that.
invested in the Pliget
Mhm.
account, and its interest rate is pretty much staying in step with the interest we're paying on that loan. And again, the reason for sitting on that cash was based on some guidance that if we wind up, you know, having some, you know, significant event that requires cash, you know, hurricane season obviously coming up. What is it? Hurricane Aaron right now hitting the coastline. Don't think it's supposed to affect us, is it? Thank God.
Not that I know of.
Thank God.
Shane's
But
the
you know, that's
weatherman.
that's the rationale.
Okay, so is there any more questions on any of that topic? Because otherwise, we can go into maybe either what we have as raw numbers for the proposed budget for 2026, or we can go into something that Jen and I provided you because we propose and recommend a tax increase. So I'm not sure what you would like to go about first. I'll let you tell me.
what was our rough number on our expenses for this year projected?
It was 4.9 million in total. Is total expenses in the budget.
And we're bringing in 4.15.
So 4.9 million in revenues and expenses, and our revenues were 4.2, $700,000 shortfall that we shored up with the loan draw. And when you take the sweeper out, you know, we're at about 2.8 million, which suggests we're pretty much on target to spend the 4.9.
Yeah, okay, thanks for that recap. I just wanted to get it down. So what you're saying is that we're looking pretty good for this year. We're on track.
Yeah, I think that we're going to match what we budgeted essentially. I don't, barring anything unforeseen.
Right.
I mean, there's, excuse me, appears to be, while there's a number of things that have been discussed, you know, with the planning commission, some things brought up here in these supervisor meetings about some development stuff to come in. doesn't appear that anything of significance will land in the remaining 5 months, well, 4.5 technically of this year.
Nor do we have any major expenses coming up that we foresee, so.
Right.
So I see where Christie's going, we're good with 25.
Yep, I don't see that we need to go drilling through these line items, because if something extraordinary comes up, staff's gonna let us know.
Well, maybe one big ticket item, in my opinion, and I'll have to leave this into Shane then, is Willow Springs for next year. That would be about $500,000. And it would only be about,
But that's a next year expense,
That's
right?
next year, they're saying.
yeah,
they paid
that's
for
not this year.
next
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
misunderstood.
Yeah,
yeah.
we added that into the budget.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
what I'm talking
We
about.
didn't-
But for,
Yeah.
for the remainder of this year, barring a massive snowstorm, a hurricane coming through and tearing up whatever,
Yep.
a storm coming through and knocking down, we should be fine with stuff. I know that when it came to,
Yes.
I know you said early in the year, the first quarter, right, because of some of the snowstorms, we kind of blew through most of the salt budget, because we definitely,
Yes.
tailored that back a bit based on history.
We did.
And again, right now, the way snowfall patterns have been, generally, we're not hitting any big snowfalls till we get in the first quarter of the new year.
Of 26, yeah.
Right. But a big snowstorm could hit us. If it hits us in November or December, that could create a challenge.
And
But-
like you said, hurricanes or anything, but that,
Yeah.
you're, for this year though, I believe even the few projects I have left, I was in the good with
Mhm.
what I have left in my line items, so.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And the salt we have on hand should last us hopefully till January.
Couple storms, hopefully in
Yeah.
January, yeah, we are stockpiling for
Okay.
next year also.
Right.
We also did pull out of liquid fuels for some salt, so we do have money left in the actual general budget for it. If we would have pulled completely out of the general budget, we would have went way over that line item already.
Well, and
Yeah.
again, I think as
Right.
long as, I think that's the other part of the challenge is historically, you've tended to fund things out of the general fund and leave the special funds
For the big road projects, that
Yeah.
they're expensive.
kind of hang.
Right.
And I think that's the thing to just be mindful of going forward.
Mhm.
Where do we pull those resources? If we have something in a special fund, to me, and we're allowed to do it, that's where I'd pull the funds from. Unless we're saving up for something big like a Willow Springs or something else.
And that Willow Springs could cost them on liquid fuels.
Okay.
But we still always kept right around that $1 million in there, correct, Jen? For
Yeah, yeah. we
total
tried to-
bridge failure, something
Yeah,
like that.
something,
so.
yeah.
It's
Huge
that
battery.
reserve mentality that we should maintain for those very reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because we want to have that as a backup, just in case we don't have that, what we need in the general fund, that's like our backup.
Speaking of liquid fuels, does anyone on the board know what the state's plan is to recoup some of the municipalities' lost costs? We're figuring, what, 2%, Jen?
Yeah, supposed to be, but we ended up getting about the same amount though, even so they said that. I don't know why that is, maybe it's gonna be next year going forwards, I don't know, but, cause I was
Or-
looking at that, but.
We did
um,
didn't we adopt some roads from Rolling Meadows and maybe that kicked in? And that's probably what we got money for? Or road,
Yes, yeah, I
Maybe
wouldn't-
we could have lost 2%, added some road mileage,
Yeah,
and it kind of brought us back even.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
then next
I
year-
wouldn't have known that.
Next
yeah.
year, then,
Yeah,
is
that's what I was
probably
gonna say,
So,
yeah.
so
thank you.
question, I saw in the PSATs it came up and said reminder, single yellow lines not eligible for liquid fuels, you're aware of that?
that's correct, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We don't have none of that. so-
Okay, I didn't think so, but I thought, I was like, I know Shane's all over this, but I just
I
need
saw
to
it.
ask.
So I think a call to your favorite senator right now.
Do we have one?
Yeah, we do.
We-
Just
yeah.
see if there's anything on down the road that they're considering doing, or maybe they're just gonna put their proverbial head in the sand with the new administration and hope it goes away.
Well, I know they were looking into like, trying to like put a tax on like electric vehicles, in some way. There was something, a bill, I think, that was going towards that effect, but
There is.
I don't know, like, where that's at, if it went into committee and died, or if it got passed there and it's just hasn't been voted on yet. That would be something maybe to ask about.
That may be the answer. I did read some things on it.
Very wishy-washy, up in the
Yeah, they
air.
don't really, I don't think they really
Like-
know exactly what they want to do to make up that money, at this point, for sure, because everybody was pushing the renewables and everything, but now I know, like, the current administration, they just, with that bill they just passed, they took a lot of those subsidies and everything away from the renewable stuff. So I don't know what that means then, you know, if they're gonna, like, just, if that's gonna affect the liquid fuels and it's gonna keep going the same way.
So
they
road
were
user
just-
charge is what it is. So
Yeah.
In April 1st of 25, PennDOT started collecting a road user charge for
Oh, was
electric
it?
vehicles. It's RUC, the RUC, it's road user charging. So I
So is
just,
that money gonna be passed off to municipality?
And that's when,
that I can't tell, but they're
that's just for
collecting it.
electric vehicles?
It should be, yeah, it's electric vehicles and hybrids. So it's, I just Googled it for the Commonwealth, so it's an overview. In 24, Act 85, and then on April 1st, they began to charge EV and what is plug-in hybrid vehicle owners a yearly road user charge. Okay, it's basically to make up for the fact, and you got to remember too is, you know, when we were all kids, we were lucky if our respective family cars got 10 miles to the gallon.
Mhm.
Now you're averaging, 15 to 20. Okay, so those taxes, and Pennsylvania is one of the highest gas tax states there is.
Yep.
And there's not enough money coming in to support the roads. So
Well,
that's
and
always
they
going to
passed
be.
the buck too on a lot of these bridges and stuff that needed fixed too.
Well,
So, I know
Pennsylvania
they were
had the worst
pushing to put
bridges
a lot of
in-
money into the bridge fixing and stuff.
Yeah, well, Pennsylvania had, or even still has, I believe, some of the worst bridges in the country.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm trying to think about for 26, 27, and 28 for us is the negatives that's gonna affect our budget, which is liquid fuels tax being down. EMS costs are going up. We want to fund capital funds so that we have money in a reserve fund to pay for equipment that's on our future lists. So we have some challenges in front of us for starting in 26 that we have to address. And I hate to say this because you already uttered the terrible words already out here about the tax increase. But I don't see any other way that we can stay with inflation
Yeah.
other than raising our taxes, which we haven't done. I've been here a while, and I don't remember even, it was a dirty word. We didn't talk about raising taxes, and we thought in our infinite wisdom that we were doing everybody a favor. And the more I think about it, the more experience I get in this position, we did not do our people a favor.
I think the thing
Well,
you
it doesn't
did-
look good to
I
have to
think-
raise them a lot at one time because you didn't raise it for a long time before that.
But I think the thing to add to that too is, there are other reasons why you didn't raise it. It's not just because you didn't want to. You also have to look at the growth of the township over
Yes,
the
we do
years,
have a lot of
because,
windfalls and development.
I mean,
Yeah.
I look at it, I mean, all of us grew up in this area, I think, right?
Not me.
So
I'm
as a
the
little,
only outsider, I guess.
as a little kid, where warehouses are, that was all orchards and farmland, and I rode my dirt bike and stuff like that. And so over the years, those things have come in. Housing developments that didn't exist before. So you get folks coming into the area, earned income tax, those development dollars came in. And so we were fortunate in all these prior years to where that growth brought in extra revenue, which allowed us to provide the services necessary. And as you looked at your budgets, you didn't need to raise tax dollars because they were occurring naturally because of growth. Now what we're seeing is a point where we're almost at saturation, not quite.
Yeah.
There's still land, but, you know, according to the comprehensive plan, it's already designated as to what those areas could be for. And there's not as much, you know, developable land, I guess, is the way I would describe it, available. So it's slowing down, right?
Yeah, but if I could give another municipality some advice, a new municipality, you know, that it's counterintuitive what I'm gonna say, but when things are good is when you should raise taxes,
Mm-hmm.
not the other way around. And, so if we take an approach for our citizens that we increase taxes gradually and not a lot on time, because we have a lot of retired folks in our area and stuff like that, I think that would be the best approach for us. We're not gonna, we're not gonna get out of debt overnight. We know that. We have a plan for that. That's gonna be handled. But the tax increase is not because of our debt, it's because of our future costs that we see coming down the road.
And to provide the services that are required
Yes,
for the residents.
because I can honestly say that Shane and the staff take care of our roads tremendously. I mean, I don't know of another township that has as nicer roads as what we have. And to maintain
I
that,
agree.
it's
I
gonna,
live in Dover.
and if you travel on a state road, the only thing the state road has going for it, it's not dusty. But and I appreciate that, and I know our citizens do, but that costs money.
Oh, yeah.
And we just can't keep our head in the sand and think everything's gonna be okay for the next 5 years. And
Well, along those lines then, given what, you know, the staff is prepared as far as things to consider coming in for 26, the services that are needed, the additional increases in costs that you mentioned for safety, security, all those things, maintaining roads, code enforcement and things of that nature, I think we do is we put the budget together, kind of really challenge ourselves as like, do we or don't we need it, right? To be as frugal as we possibly can and focus on the expenses and say, what is that number? Then we go, much like we do before, look at the revenues, you know, what's our confidence level? Certain things are reoccurring. There's some big stuff in there like earned income tax, some of the property taxes from transfers, which those tend to be the bluebirds that we don't want to count on unless we know they're definitely coming, right? And then see what that delta is between the revenues that are coming in versus the services we need to provide. And then what kind of shortfall is there and what will it take to make that up? And some of that could be that, okay, to your point, it will do a small tax increase to make up part of it. We could dig into some cash reserves potentially to shore up the other part, or we don't pay down the remaining 800 and some thousand of our loan next year unless something significant, you know, revenues come about.
well, I have to factor in what that's gonna cost us in interest, so.
Yep, that'll be in the
It's-
budget.
Yeah, and.
Yeah,
is
I'll
it-
know
is-
more once we get closer to that. I'll have better numbers for like the first year and stuff, where we're at with that. Like I said, with the interest that we're getting right now, on that account, seems like it's close to offsetting the actual interest that we're paying on the loan at this point. So, but like I said, I'll have better numbers once we get closer to once we get to the budget, the actual budget meeting.
And Dean, what you just said is the blueprint that we have been, I feel we have been following that.
Mhm.
It's just reinforcing that blueprint and sticking with our plan,
Mhm.
which may, it may result in an increased tax rate of a little bit. Now, to back that up, let's go back to EMS, emergency services. We are mandated by law to have an EOC, which costs us money, costs the boroughs money to have an EOC, but we need to get it. That's an unfunded mandate from the states. Even though we do have a major hurricane come through and we activate our EOC, York County and Pima is gonna come in and take over anyhow. So I don't wanna get in my soapbox about that. But EOC takes money to run, and, fire departments, we rely on 2 volunteer fire departments to provide us security and safety for our residents for fire. They go to auto accidents, they go, anytime there's an emergency, they're there. And that is a vital service for our residents. That's our number one requirement as being supervisors, to provide safety for our residents, and we're doing that. But Jen, you can attest to this, I don't think we've given them adequate money throughout the years, but it hasn't raised exponentially at all.
There was a couple years you guys gave them a little more and then took it back down the next year, but it's been the same kind of range the whole time, yeah. You haven't really increased it and kept it there.
So we've been giving them the same amount of funding level, and I'm sure the boroughs are as well. The boroughs give what they can give, and I understand that. We give what we can give. It's just proportionally, we're different than they are. And, but the thing that has changed is the cost of their equipment.
Yes, that's what I
And-
was going to say.
And the mandates that come down from the state for training, and you gotta turn in your gear every so many years and buy new gear and stuff. All that costs money. So with that being said, and we haven't raised taxes, that alone justifies to me, for the safety of our residents, that we increase our tax base a little bit.
Well, and I think that's a valid point. I mean, you know, because bottom line is we all know costs increase year over year. They don't stay the same.
Yeah,
Some
nothing ever
things
gets
rise,
cheaper.
you know, much greater because of other demands. But, you know, when we look at our budget, part of the budget process will be like, okay, what's the general increase in some areas? Is it 2% or 3%? We'll look at whatever cost of living is in general, and that'll be somewhat of a guide, right? But historically, if we haven't increased any of the, you know, cost for EMS services, well, we're behind again,
Yes.
right? For them, like you said, because the equipment, their expenses continue to rise. They don't stop. They don't hold steady, right?
That's right.
And so that's another factor in that it's our mandate,
So-
part of our mandate. Right?
So we are going, we did initiate a request for a study of our fire services so that we know if we're going in the right direction or if there's another direction to go.
Right.
However, with police costs rise, I mean, we can't get away with less than 3% a year increase for police costs, just for cost of living adjustments and stuff. The thing is, we all know, we're not naive enough to think that if the volunteer fire department said, nope, we can't get anybody to come when the siren goes off, so we're not gonna be there for you. And we'd have to create a professional fire department or contract somebody to do that for us.
Yeah.
We'd have a line item like we do police.
Yeah, seven-figure numbers.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, I tried to always reiterate that to Dave before, you know, to make sure to reiterate that to you guys too, that if those volunteers went away, that would not only be a lot more reporting on our part to the state and everything, but there'd be huge insurance costs, liability costs and things. Not to mention if we were paying, you know, like any, you know, like depending on what would happen if we were actually bringing them on as employees or whatever, or if, you know, if it was a separate company, we'd still have those huge costs.
Audits
would-
would be worse.
Yes, it would be, yeah.
And to bring this to a close, that, you know, we're helping our residents by maintaining the solvency of our volunteer fire departments. And the young men and women that do serve in the volunteer I appreciate their service, and I really do, for their community. So it's vital for us to maintain our volunteer fire services as long as we can. I can see the day where that will probably be non-existent, but I hope not for a while.
Do they do anything like at the high schools or anything? Like, do the guys from the fire companies now like go in there and do any talks to try and like recruit any young
I'm not
guys?
sure. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure if
That
they
might be
can.
something to look into, maybe to help, like, keep that momentum going.
I thought that's how
They had
Mark
that-
got involved. I think they did approach him at the school level.
Yeah.
Well, they had that allowing the volunteers to leave class to do it, but then
Yeah.
it got abused.
Oh,
They went out on fire alarms and not actual fires,
okay.
and then they weren't coming back on time, and
No.
so.
I just never done that in school. I think you
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
but let's think about our industrial areas, and I hate to say it, the warehousing that's coming into our area. That requires a different level of fire service and protection than a residential area where you're handing out smoke alarms.
Right.
So, all that said, it's increasing, and I think we gotta increase with it.
No, and again, I think what we should do is we should, much like we did last year, build the budget from kind of the ground up with expenses. Then you look at our revenues and see where the magic is and challenge yourself, obviously, on expenses. Is this a must-have or is this a nice-to-have? Pull those things out. And then, it's a math exercise, frankly.
Mhm.
So if you're $500,000 short, how do you make that gap up? Because then it gets back to, well, if you try and do it, and I'm just making numbers up, oh, well, in order to close a $500,000 gap, it's a 2% increase on taxes, which means on the average household, it's X amount of dollars additional a year or a month. That could be, really untenable. It gets back to the things we've talked about, right?
It does become untenable, but the amount of tax and the length that we increase it all computes into whether we or our citizens can afford it. So with that being said, show us where the magic is.
Okay. So, first,
Can you
so,
put it up on the,
um,
Maybe.
You're good.
I just have to back her down. Okay, so the goal here in staff's opinion and what you decide after, we review, the more details like you were just explaining, Dean, is I think if we did this in phasing, we would start obviously small, like you also already stated in this meeting. And it would be because of emergency services. I mean, you made great points about those other items that are also, we're not gonna get as much funding for anymore, and we have to start doing the savings for bigger projects so that we're not hit in our budget in a year, for something that we need because of the big truck broke down or whatever, and we need to replace that truck. But so for this, I'm presenting, because of emergency services, the goal is for the township to incrementally increase taxes to account for fire hydrant bills, emergency services, and overall increases in general expenses. Staff could not locate the last time taxes were raised, but we certainly know it's been at least 20 years and probably more than 20 years. This is due to the residential and industrial growth within the township, which you also already said. And then additionally, for about 7 years now, the auditors have recommended raising the taxes to offset the rising expenses. Going forward, each year should be reassessed for a possible tax increase. It's very, very hard to figure out what it should be every year because there's so many unknown variables each year.
Yep.
So raising taxes for emergency services is primarily intended to address funding shortages and expense increases within the fire and police departments. As you know, that police account line item is also increasing. But otherwise, this is to ensure they can effectively respond to emergencies and maintain adequate staffing levels. And specifically, it aims to allow the township to allocate more revenue to provide a more stable and reliable funding source for these critical services. The real estate tax increase should effectively eliminate the fire hydrant tax in the year 2026 in staff's opinion, and that's what we're gonna recommend. So We did due diligence, and even last year, we were doing due diligence with both the auditor and the attorney to investigate other special taxes and what that looks like for us. And essentially what that chalks up to is if you did a special fire services tax, that is not allowed to go towards the fire hydrant bills. So now people who are paying the fire hydrant tax would also have a fire service tax, and the water bill wouldn't be evenly dispersed amongst the tax base because the law, the state law, requires anyone who is within 780 feet of a fire hydrant is who has that tax. So it's not everyone in our township who has the fire hydrant tax. So now we're making an uneven tax amongst our residents and community, and therefore the best way, in staff's opinion, is to make it a part of the general real estate tax and do a general real estate increase, and get rid of the fire hydrant tax. That way your fire hydrant bills are evenly dispersed among your tax base, okay? Everybody benefits from the fire hydrants, even if you're not close or within 780 feet of the fire hydrant. The tanker trucks will still go to the fire hydrant to fill up. So those who are without of that distance are still benefiting, and therefore that tax should be shared. And we heard some of that from residents last year when we were talking about increasing, and we did increase the fire hydrant tax because the bills have gotten more expensive and the water company was granted by the PUC a significant increase. So therefore, what I'm presenting, and I know I just said a lot, but I did really mark around here where right now the general millage rate for real estate taxes is 1.04 mils. Okay.
That's important for people out there listening and watching.
Mhm.
Our millage rate is 1.04
And that is
currently.
pretty low. When we pulled the millage rates for York County, we definitely have a lower millage rate than most of the municipalities, for sure.
So put that in perspective here, and we cannot, and I want to reinforce, we cannot compare townships to boroughs. Because the boroughs could charge a millage rate plus a fire tax, but then their hydrants are more uniform
Mm-hmm.
than one in a rural area. But take it, compare that to, let's go to Manchester Borough. Manchester Borough is 2.90, but they don't charge a fire tax. Mount Wolf has a 5.25 millage rate with a 0.25 fire tax. So they're helping, they're helping offset their taxpayers by charging at 0.25 to go to their contribution to the fire company program, most likely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, let's compare a like township for us then. Let's go to Conowalga. Conowalga's tax millage is at 1.32 and a 0.26 fair tax on top of that. So we are low. We're not certainly the lowest.
No, we're not the lowest.
I mean, there's like East Hopewell, it's 1.00, but we're at 1.04,
Mm-hmm.
which goes back to, it's been like that for over 20 years.
Correct. And therefore, and I did obtain from Kathy, our tax collector, what our total property assessment is as of January of 2025. And that number is $889,601. I'm sorry, $889,601,228. I'm reading on a really small screen here because it's not right in front of me.
Make it bigger.
Yeah, that's what
I
I
forgot
was
to bring my
trying
glasses
to.
over
I
here
should have
with me.
printed this out for myself. So anyways, what I did was I went down and I increased it 0.01 mils and shown what it would look like, what you would bring in with just a 0.01 mil difference. What I did was I landed at 1.15 mils because that number difference is what would cover your fire hydrant bills, okay? Which means anyone who's paying the fire hydrant tax right now, if we raised it to 1.15 mils for real estate, those people would actually be paying 0.04 millage less, okay? So they would pay less in taxes if you raised it to 1.15 mils. That would be with the shared tax base for the fire hydrant fund, and but it would support the increase needed to eliminate the fire hydrant tax.
So basically, we're just spreading that fire hydrant tax out amongst the population.
Correct.
So where I live, I don't know what a fire hydrant looks like, but the fire department goes to a fire hydrant somewhere before they come to fight my fire.
That's
So
correct.
I see your theory there.
Yes.
And also, if it's in the general fund and not in that fire hydrant special fund, that can only be used for that particular thing. If it comes in as real estate taxes, we have broad leverage to use it for whatever the township may need to use that money for.
That's a good point, because we gotta discuss that, because at first, when I was studying this stuff at home, I'm thinking, well, why don't we just go a little bit less on the millage, plus do an EMS tax and a fire tax? But with the fire tax and the EMS tax, there's caveats to that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
And-
keep it simple.
And you got a basic geo fence that you can't spend money outside of that fence, but like Jen's saying, if we put it in our millage, we can adjust what we pay for fire services or whatever
And
we
we can,
need.
we can adjust our budget line items to include those, do you know what I mean? Like, I can make an account line item, for, like separate, if we wanna make another fire service line item or whatever you guys would want. I can split more line items up so we can have those separated, so you guys know exactly what's gonna go to what,
I mean,
you know?
I like
Like we
the
do
idea.
now with the police and the or not the fire hydrants, the fire companies and.
I like the idea of flexibility, but again, we gotta come back to the why. Why are we looking to increase? So there's a gap between revenue and expenses that we need to close. And part of, again, just reiterating what you said earlier, Dave, is part of the primary mission that we have is to provide safety for our residents. So if we're raising it, all the discussions about trying to shore that up and make sure we have adequate funds for emergency services, along with other things. So I like the flexibility part. I guess a very succinct way to put it is, like flexibility, but let's not forget why we're doing it and where those funds ultimately will probably be directed to.
And that's a very good point for the public to realize. I know we're gonna get a lot of stuff through this, but I like that we can have the flexibility and the simplicity of explaining our taxes. Because it's very important for the public to know that we're not raising taxes because of the brand-new building we built.
Yeah.
We have that plan separate to pay that off, and we got that handled. It is cost of living adjustments throughout the years, the cost of EMS services, fire, police, you name it. And we're only gonna do it to keep our head above water. We're not gonna taxing everybody to make money.
Yeah, it's not about building up a war chest. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
we have
Governments aren't supposed to be
we have
making
the,
profits.
Right.
we have that 40% reserve that we've been given guidance on, so that, again, it gets back to having emergencies, right? If emergency comes up, and if we need to borrow money to fund that emergency until we get reimbursed through federal or state or whatever.
Just to interject, that 40% is sound principle.
Yeah.
Because it keeps everybody sleeping at night. They don't have to worry about what's gonna happen tomorrow. We don't have that money.
Exactly.
But okay. go
Yeah,
ahead.
right, because it's the cash flow issue, and I think, Shane, you had mentioned this before, right? The big storm comes through, those federal or state, dollars from emergency management aren't coming the next day. You're out there the next day or right after the storm finishes, making repairs, and the township needs cash to be able to fund those efforts.
Yep.
Okay, and that's the big reason of keeping that, kind of 40% reserve out there.
Yep.
And because then also, if it becomes something massive, the other reason for it was, it allows us to go out into the financial markets and potentially borrow money if we don't have enough. Because that was the other driving factor. It's, you know,
Basic thing for citizens to realize that if we have a flood come through or a hurricane, the road washes out. Shane, you just put barricades up for the next 3 months because we're waiting on the state money. That's not good enough for our citizens. We want that road open, so we're gonna have to absorb that cost
yeah, in the short term.
for short term.
Yep, so all the right reasons for doing what we're doing. And again, I come back to, you know, from a simplicity standpoint, right? It's nice to go to, it's like, here's, this one tax covers it all.
Yeah.
I like the flexibility it provides us, but again, we need to make sure that we don't lose sight of ultimately why we're increasing and ultimately where those funds get directed.
I'd like to just add and just clarify that the 1.15 millage rate would just be enough to cover the fire hydrant bills that we
Right, it's a
currently
wash.
have.
It
It'd
takes
be a
the burden,
wash.
it takes the burden off of somebody
Right.
that lives within the 700 and some feet of a fire hydrant.
Right,
And like Dave, you and I are in that same predicament where we live. There isn't a fire hydrant in sight.
now I did provide millage rates at, going up another, 0.01 mils after the 0.15, just to show what that looks like. And because right now it is hard to say what it should be, and I don't have a recommendation to show you because we're just starting our budget. And so after we get that going on, we'll have to show you what that looks like. But I think this is enough to start the conversations. But, in order to see that gap, are we making just enough to continue making our payments on the loan? Or, are we having excess funds that we don't need to raise it more than that? I'm not sure right now.
So just to kind of get it back for me,
Yep,
1.04 is what we, the residents, are paying now.
correct.
And if we take it to 1.15 mils, that would take away the fire tax from the folks that are subject to it being within that 700 foot, and it'd be a wash,
Correct.
okay? And then the 1.2 would provide an additional almost a little over $40,000 at the discounted rate into our revenues if we chose to go there. I'm trying to think of
Right, that'd be after the fire hydrant bills, correct.
right, the overall math on that.
Right.
Basically, it's.
What did you just say, Dean, that if we, 1.15 is just gonna break even?
Right, it wouldn't change anything from a nominal dollars.
Correct.
The fire tax would go away for those residents who live within that 700 and some odd feet distance of a
Mhm.
fire hydrant. And it gets spread across all the residents. So again, I come back to like you and I, Dave, where we live, there is no fire hydrant in sight.
Yeah, but my
Well,
point,
also too, if we get rid of that fire hydrant tax, I still have the balance in here that I have to pay down with. So actually that will kind of be, like if she's not collecting it then going forwards, I'm still gonna be using the rest of this to pay those bills off at least next year.
Yeah.
So
Well, which is
You-
the
But
bad
I
news,
would
isn't it?
look, but I would think,
we're gonna have enough in there to pay probably one more year because they raised it, like I said, last year. Remember?
Okay,
But I
So
would
we'll probably have
suggest that-
enough in that fire hydrant for next year to pay the fire hydrant bills.
yeah.
so the
But if they
first,
get rid of, if you guys get rid of it, that'll do you know what I mean? That's
Yeah,
gonna offset
That's what I'm
that.
thinking, we don't eliminate the fire hydrant tax immediately.
Well,
Give you a chance to pay it all for 1 year.
I
well,
mean, you
would
guys
want
could
to
eliminate it and
yeah.
not, and her not collect it then, but like I said, I'm pretty sure from my calculations, I'm gonna have enough, because you guys did raise it for one more year then,
But that's just 1 year. It's the extra
Yeah.
cash that's hanging around. So
Yeah.
I'm more focused on what's kind of the steady state
The state,
and for the
yeah.
residents
Oh, yeah.
themselves. So,
I'm
just
just
looking
putting
at the
that out there, I mean.
two numbers, right? So if
I mean,
if-
that's just the
if
best
I-
thing, because
if I'm a resident that's within 700 and some feet of a fire hydrant and we raise it to 1.15, I will feel no impact. Okay? I'm still gonna have the same layout of tax monies.
Yeah.
Okay? For folks like you and I, Dave, who don't live within that 700 and some odd feet, that's an increase for us. Which, you know, it is what it is, but it
Yeah.
spreads it across the board. So I'm just looking at that first piece there. That's about what, sorry, $6,000 increase across $960,000. I can't do math today in my head, sorry.
Well, while you're doing the math,
Yeah,
the question I have is the 1.15 is just redistributing
Mhm.
basically what we have.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the
It's a better way
tax
to put it.
increase for 26 does not do anything for inflation.
It does not.
So.
And it doesn't do anything to be proactive either, like, because you guys were talking earlier about like all the industrial down there is almost, you know, all those windfalls are probably gonna start to go away, so we have to be proactive and think, hey, we have to start, that's another reason you can give, to say that, hey, we're trying to do our due diligence and, raise this a little bit at a time to make up for that
Yeah.
when it comes.
I mean, it's not popular,
Oh, no,
but that's,
it
but
never
that's,
is.
but that's why we're elected in here to make
Mhm.
the hard choices.
Yes,
And we're making a hard choice on ourselves because I'm a taxpayer.
yeah,
And I do want to make it as small as possible, the input. However, we don't want to go through this exercise and just redistribute our taxes and not make anything for inflation, because the reason, the impetus we're doing this is because of inflation, everything
To catch
costing more and to catch up. So with that being said, I hate to say it, I don't believe I'm saying it out of these lips, but I don't think 1.15 is enough for the first year.
It's definitely not. And so,
I need a clarification, what you said earlier about EMS. In my mind, EMS tax is ambulance services. Are you talking EMS, or are you talking about EOC?
I'm
Emergency services.
EMS would fall under some of the fire department when they go out on their brush truck or their rescue truck. And ambulance is not in the equation because we pay for that
Yeah.
service. But it's also for for our EMC too.
yeah, the ambulance, we don't have to
Okay,
worry about
that's
because it's
why I'm trying
privatized
to
now.
separate my mind. You kept saying EMS, I'm thinking we don't pay for ambulance service.
I'm bundling fire and ambulance, or fire and EOC as a bundle in EMS. And I shouldn't maybe. Because what Mike Fisher does here, it costs us, I think we're paying what, 4,000 a year? What are we paying?
The last
To
budget was
maintain
6,000.
I believe.
6,000.
But we're actually not technically
Yeah.
paying 6,000, we're only paying like 2,000
No,
because we
and-
get reimbursed.
But-
Yeah, we split.
If you
So-
remember, yeah, that gets
Okay, so
split, and I
let's-
filled
let's-
that out for
let's-
the
And I might
previous
be
year
wrong
in
in my
Yeah.
thinking.
That's what, because, if you say EMS to general people out here, they're gonna say, oh, ambulance service.
well, it's emergency services.
True, and a
Right.
lot of those probably municipalities do pay for their own ambulance, so I
Yeah.
apologize. I was wrong.
Yeah, that's why I was
So,
trying to get straight
let's
in my mind,
Just
or,
go,
or language we use for it.
um,
But I'm more inclined to look at the 1.2.
okay, well, here's the issue, okay? So go up to where, again, the bullet point that Chrissy has where it says property worth 350K.
Yep.
First comment is number one, I would argue that 350K is an overstated value for this township, in my opinion. While there are houses that are certainly of that value, I don't know that that's the overarching average. But that aside, you just look at that house, if you have a house, a property worth 350K assessed value, okay? It's $364 that you currently have, right? And if we go to 1.15, that's a $38.50 per year increase.
Yep.
38 bucks, not horrible, but from a percentage standpoint, it's 10.5%. So nominal dollars, not big, unless of course, you're struggling. But if you're struggling, you're probably not living in a assessed value house of 350K.
And then I do have under there, though, an easier way to look at that particular millage rate increase. Easier way would be, it's actually $11 per 100,000 of your property assessment. So additional, in addition to what you already pay. So,
The point is it's still it's a 10% increase. And if you go to 1.2, that's gonna be about 15 or 16% increase, I believe. So I'm just trying to bring it back
Oh,
to
yeah.
those kind of nominal dollars, but I like that probably better, Christie, for
yeah,
every $100,000 of assessed value, it's an additional $11 a year cost.
right.
And
with the point
$11 for some folks may not be an issue, but for others, it certainly can be.
Right,
And that's all I'm trying to point out, is that, you know, and this gets back to your opening comment, Dave. For years, we've been fortunate because of growth in our township where we haven't had to increase taxes. That growth is kind of flattened out, if you will, okay? Tapered off. And look, things are cyclical, right? You know, what was it, the early 2000s was a big housing boom in the area type of deal, and that's kind of subsided now. All right, yeah, we've had a lot of warehouse development, but a lot of that land has been taken up, okay? There's still some, but, you know, we're not making any more land, right? And so this is this kind of juxtaposition of where we're caught because of that good fortune over years. So I don't like doing a thing where, hey, this is a, you know, someone looks at percentage, it's like 10%. Well, the cost of living would go up 10%. So that's really that hard pill to kind of swallow. But if you want to make the fire tax go away and spread that across, because I agree, you know, based on what we heard from the chief and some other residents, it makes sense. And again, you know, I live in an area where there is no fire hydrant. So if they're coming, they've got to tap in somewhere because they can't stick the hose in the creeks anymore like they did decades ago. Okay. So yeah, I should fund, as a resident, I should fund part of that fire tax.
Mhm.
And so individually, that just means at a minimum to break even, we have to increase it from 1.04 to 1.15, which is a 10% increase. There's no way, 10 or 11% increase depending on which way you round. There's no way to get around it.
Okay. I think this is good. I think that this probably should be a discussion point probably at every board meeting going forward, if you agree, just so that it's at, I know. Just so that the public is very aware, and then once we start getting down to nitty gritties, you know, or whatever you want me to put on the website, just to put the information out there. But it sounds like everyone here agrees that something needs to be done. We just need to nail it down on what that amount is. So,
And then we need to explain it to the tax base. And I would be in favor of advertising one meeting just for
The budget
the
process, which we
budget
have.
process, which will equate to a tax increase. So if you're interested in knowing what that means, please come out to this meeting, because we appreciate your input,
mhm.
and we do. We're gonna explain why we come up with our infinite wisdoms, of the nuts and bolts of it, but, they may have questions that we never thought of.
Yeah, and again, you know, well, let's just round it up. 11% increase, because that's $11 on every 100,000. You know, it's 11% increase to make the fire tax go away and spread that fire tax cost across all residents in the township. That doesn't add anything additional to our, you know, the revenues coming in. It's just status quo. And if you want to make up for, you know, okay, well, on top of that, is it 2 or 3%? Well, 2 or 3% is not 1.2 mil jump. Okay, that's 15% over the base. That's a 5% increase on top of that. Just quick math. I think that'll hold together. Maybe not. Close enough, good enough, right? But that's the piece I think we need to evaluate next, if that makes
I
sense.
agree,
Mhm.
I agree, I think we're there.
And so I think that's the budget process to go through. What do we see 26 look like?
Mhm.
What are the, you know, and really challenge, we're gonna have to do like we did before, challenge ourselves. Is this a nice to have or must have?
Mhm.
Okay. You know, I think we talked about the capital expenditure account, setting that up so we could start setting aside every year funds so that when we need another significant piece of equipment, we've got a reserve build up. And that reserve has flexibility in it as well. While we're earmarking it for something, we could always, in an emergency, tap into that cash and put it back at some point as well.
Yeah, I had sent some emails to the auditor about that, and, then I actually sent, cause then in the last, and, I know Christy had put on her list, like the first interchange that we had, or exchange that we had. And then I had to email him again to clarify, and then he came back with something else, basically to utilize like maybe one of the Pliget accounts that we have already set up, and just, converting that to our capital reserve, because he said obviously it has to be separate, which, you know, we all knew that. But then it would still grow interest. And I think probably the best thing to do is probably for, Christy and I maybe to call, Pliget and get some more information about what the best one, because right now we have a prime account that gets the most interest, and that's where almost all of our money is, or the majority of it is, because of that. And, I don't know if we can have another one of those, or if we should, I don't know. I figure the Pliget people would probably be able to give us some advice in that, in those scenarios.
Yeah, I did read, I thought you had shared it, but now I can't find it. for
It's
some
at the
reason.
bottom of my ongoing list of things we can't forget
Oh.
about.
That's where I read it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
I knew I read it somewhere, I just couldn't remember where. That whole exchange, and let's see. So, mini account, general. Yeah, so he's talking about the accounting of it. Just makes keeping. So in reading this very quickly, Jen, the only thing I would say is, I don't know that we need a separate bank account to put it in.
That's what I
It,
said to
it
him.
basically can be in the Pliget account that earns the most, so logistic, but in our bookkeeping, we'll have it segregated. So,
Yes,
you know, if there's, making numbers up again, if there's 2 million in Pliget and we set up and say, you know what, we want to create this capital reserve fund and we want to put $100,000 into it, the cash still stays 2 million bucks, but in the bookkeeping, we make an entry to say from general fund, take 100,000, shove it over into the cash fund of the capital.
yeah. Well, right now we have 3 general fund, Pliget accounts. There's a class account, which is the supervisor's account. We have a Pliget Plus account, which was one of the ones that they came out, which was, had a little bit better interest rate at one point. And then now they came out with the prime account, which is the one that has the most interest and where we have most everything. But the other 2 we have open. And yeah, originally he was like, well, because that was my fault. I was looking in the chart of accounts, the PA chart of accounts, and in there it said for like the state capital reserve or capital, thing, it should start, you know, it should be a separate account, like a separate checking account starting with 30, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
And that's what I was trying to get at him, like, because sometimes he doesn't give me a straight answer.
No, that's
So
fine.
I had to like go back to him and clarify with this. I was like, so do we need a separate one or not? And then when he came back to me, then he suggested, well, hey, you can probably just utilize one of those Pliget accounts that you already have open and just use that to transfer over and call it, you know,
Right.
change the name to capital reserve account.
The bookkeeping is
Yeah.
separate from where the physical cash ultimately resides.
Yeah,
So I think
yeah.
we're fine with that.
And so then it's segregated, you know.
So, I mean,
So.
to me, guys, I would think that it'd be in our best interest to get that at least established, whether that requires a resolution, at least get the mechanics of it in place, and then when we get to like the end of this year, probably first quarter of next year, maybe we could basically say, hey, you know what, we're gonna move X amount of dollars over into it. Whether that's $5 or 50,000 or $500,000, that'll depend on where we're sitting and what we wanna do.
Well, let me ask you this, are we gonna, I think our next step is to go through, as early as it is, to go through our projected 26 budget, roughly.
Well, and that's this list that
To see
Christie
where
kind
we're
of,
at.
and just look at these big line items and just say, need more information, or, okay, you know. I think, yeah, just because Christie took time to put this document together, I think it'd be prudent to just walk through it.
Absolutely, and I was hoping that we could come up with a rough idea of, yeah, we're gonna be able to transfer X amount into one of these accounts.
Don't know that we'll be able to do that
Just
today.
start seed money for,
I think it's premature to move anything into this capital fund we're talking about.
so I'm
setting up.
not saying move it, I'm saying have a plan
Okay. Yep, oh, okay,
for a ballpark figure of what we can move
okay,
when the time comes.
when the time comes.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's fine.
okay. We should
So-
probably put like a small amount in there, I would suggest, just so there's something to kind of reconcile then if we're changing it and actually setting it up. Because right now those accounts have a small amount in them, like $20 and some change or something, both of those other accounts, because everything's in that prime.
Are you talking about the actual physical cash accounts, or?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes,
all right.
yeah.
I mean, to me, whatever bank account makes the most money, and there's nothing against
That's what
our
I-
rules, regulations, or law, that's where the money should
Yeah.
sit. I don't, you know,
Well,
and if those other accounts are open for some other reason, that's fine. We don't need to mess with them, in my opinion.
okay. Well, I'm
Okay?
just saying, the auditor said that that would be an option to use one of those other ones because it should be, if we're setting it up as a capital reserve, he said it should be segregated in its own.
Well, he's talking about, I'm sorry,
What
I
about
will
the
say what I
interest?
read. Sorry.
What about
Yeah,
the interest?
In
The
here,
interest is
in
same.
here, he's talking about a separate bank account, like right now we have O1 as the general account, O2
Well,
is the
sorry,
street bank.
I'm segregating the bookkeeping piece from the reality where it physically sits. And-
Yeah.
And even what I've looked at here, my opinion is they're segregated. He doesn't really care where the physical money resides, but there is the bookkeeping piece, which is to keep it separate. That's all. And again, from a standpoint of maximizing, you know, our potential earnings, unless there's some rule that I'm overlooking, which is possible, because I
Yeah,
don't know.
I don't know, I'll have to
Just-
clarify that
yeah.
with him.
Just
for
makes
sure.
sense to keep it in the best account that earns interest.
Well, I agree.
Yep.
I'm just saying that's the gist that I got from
Okay.
the last email that he said, why don't you use one of these other accounts and set it up as a separate capital reserve, meaning keep that money separated from your regular stuff. So, I mean, I'll talk to him and clarify that. And like I said, I think Christie and I should make a call to Pliget too and see what their recommendation is too.
Yeah, because if they basically say there's no reason to have the other two accounts, I mean,
Well, we
again,
have-
I
In
keep,
order to have our class, the Pliget class account that we originally had is the one that we literally have to keep. We have to keep those open.
and again, if there's reasons for keeping them,
Yeah, it's just part of the Pliget thing in
Okay.
order to have.
that's
And
fine.
the Prime account, they just, was something new that they came up with. And since, like, originally we had that class account and that's where most of our money was. And then when they came out with the plus, then we moved most of our money into that one because that had the bigger interest rate.
Okay.
And now that they have the Prime, we moved almost all of it into that now because
Yeah.
that has the most interest
Okay.
rate.
No, that works,
So-
and I know you reconcile.
But yeah,
so we're
those other
good.
ones, because they're like original accounts, we can't close them.
Yep.
So
No, and that's fine.
So
it's
the-
just a Pliget thing.
So before because Christie appears to be poised and ready to explain,
Hey, I'm just letting y'all talk.
and I think, does anyone need to take a 5-minute break before we get into this?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I just took
I was gonna say.
I'll make a motion, we recess for 5 minutes.
Sounds like a plan.
All in favor?
Aye.
Give yourself a lot of video.